Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Tanya Francis. Coming up tonight, down to the final three in the race for who will become the next Prime Minister, as Kemi Badenoch is kicked out of the latest leadership vote. The London Fire Brigade declare a serious incident across the capital after a huge surge in fires, with the highest temperatures ever recorded in the UK in Heathrow, reaching 40.2 degrees. We'll have updates throughout the show on the extreme heatwave and how it's affecting Londoners. We'll have a sneak peek at the film telling the story of that cave rescue in Thailand that captured the world's attention, seeing all 12 football players and their coach rescued safely. And mixing dubstep and piano, how one man went from Wall Street to mixing two very unlikely genres together. We'll hear from the artist ahead of his London gig. Well, all of that on the way, but first, Kemi Badenoch has been voted out of the leadership race, leaving a remaining three candidates battling it out to become the Prime Minister and the leader of the Conservative Party. Well, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss are left in the race. This was the penultimate vote of the Tory MPs, and tomorrow we'll find out who the final two candidates are. It'll then be down to Tory members to pick the winner and who will be announced on the 5th of September to take over from Boris Johnson. The London Fire Brigade have also declared a major incident across London in response to the heat and a huge surge in fires across the capital today, with over 350 firefighters tackling at least 4 grass fires. Well, the Mayor has tweeted calling it critical, saying that the London Fire Brigade are under immense pressure. Well, it comes as several houses were severely damaged after fires broke out on the outskirts of East London. The advice is to report a fire as soon as you see one, no barbecues, and to dispose of cigarettes safely. Well, it comes as today we reached record temperatures of 40.2 degrees Celsius. That's what the thermometers were showing at Heathrow around 1 o'clock this afternoon. It's the first time the UK has ever had temperatures above 40 degrees and was the highest number recorded across the whole of the UK. It was also the UK's warmest night on record last night. It didn't dip below 25 degrees, so let's see if we're going to top that this evening. Could be an uncomfortable night. We also saw disruption across the travel network as Oxford Circus Tube was evacuated following a suspected fire in one of the lifts. Despite 1 million Londoners braving the tube and buses this morning, which is considerably lower than normal levels, there were severe delays across most lines and the Thames cable car was closed. That's all due to the extreme heat that we're experiencing at the moment. Well, this extreme weather has come with a further warning from emergency services and the government about the dangers of trying to keep cool in waterways and rivers. It can be very tempting, but it comes after a 14-year-old boy is believed to have jumped into the Thames in Hampton after jumping off the Tags Head Island Bridge and didn't resurface. Well, a body has been recovered from the Thames after a search for the young boy. Well, sticking with the weather, 5 people were arrested after eco-activists from Extinction Rebellion smashed windows at the News UK headquarters in London early this morning. It's believed that they were protesting over the newspaper's coverage of the heatwave. Pictures show activists sitting in front of the building, wearing T-shirts which you can see here read "non-violent." 2 large windows were smashed and the words "Tell the Truth" and 40 degrees equals death were spray painted on the front of the building. Now, in a first for the UK, schools in Southwark will not exclude students for behaving badly. According to the council, well, secondary schools in the borough have agreed to not send home disruptive children unless they have put another child's safety at risk. Teachers are being encouraged to understand the reason for bad behaviour by using a trauma-informed response and are being told not to take misbehaviour at face value. In other news, a new report has revealed parents or expecting mothers often receive conflicting advice from GPs and other maternity services. The London Council Beyond Boundaries research suggests that there is little or no information sharing between GPs, midwifery hospital services and health visiting services. But researchers did find a third of local authorities in London are working to create better support for families, with the report recommending local leaders use family hubs to improve information sharing. Now, the Mayor's extension of the ultra-low emissions zone has had a limited impact on reducing toxic air levels in the suburbs in the capital, according to new research. Well, TfL published data on pollution levels since the ULEZ expansion was put in place last October. Well, if we were to compare figures from January to March 2021, it shows a 56% reduction in nitrogen dioxide emissions in central London. If we compare that with just 44% from April to June of this year. So the figures show that the bulk of the benefit is connected with the original central London ULEZ zone, which was launched in April 2019. Well, Sadiq Khan has told the Evening Standard that the benefits are unarguable, with 67,000 fewer non-compliant vehicles on the roads, and that 93.8% of vehicles entering ULEZ are now compliant. Now, let's bring you this. Many of you will remember a tense 18 days back in 2018 when the world watched the rescue of 12 boys and their football coach from a flooded cave network in Thailand. Well, a film following the rescue mission is set to be released later this year in November, starring Colin Farrell and Viggo Mortensen. Well, before we hear from the director and one of the real-life divers involved in the mission, let's take a look at the trailer.
Hey, Rick. You following what's happening in Thailand? Some kids stuck in a cave.
It's just a tourist cave.
It looks easy, but when it's flooded, it's impassable.
What I began to recognize as we were working on the movie is that there are a lot of reasons to be fearful in a situation like that. It's physical, but also the emotional. What it could mean to you. What scar tissue emotionally could you take away from an event like this, especially if things don't go well. Politics, career decisions. These people took risks on so many different levels to make this happen, and I tried to dramatize as much of that as I could in this film.
It takes a certain kind of mindset for the deep cave diving. You have to be a bit nuts.
They're very, very dangerous.
High water level and the low visibility.
Barely shoulder wide.
Really still upsets me to this day is that Harry, who I play, who was a doctor, knew that when he participated in the rescue in the way that he did, really believed there was a possibility that he was going to kill some of the children, knowing that if he didn't even try, that possibly they would all die. The fact that he took that risk, knowing that it could affect the rest of his life, really affects me.
12 boys and their coach are trapped in the flooded caves.
Hello?
Hey.
They're here.
How many of you?
13.
13.
They're all alive.
Can we go out now?
At the end of the day, no matter what your background, your culture, your religion, when something like this happens, when that happened with those children, I feel like myself, the entire world was focused on the hope and the care which underlined our humanity, that all these kids would come out okay.
What are you thinking?
Just a crazy idea.
You've got a skill none of the rest of us have.
No. It's insane. It's unethical. It's illegal.
When we arrived in Thailand, it was completely chaotic, but it was clear that we had previous experience and we could probably make a difference. So, nothing like this had ever been experienced before. We really had to sort of write the operational manual as we went along. So, it was a lot. We didn't have time to be thinking about anything apart from the nuts and bolts of the rescue, not necessarily emotions and feelings at the time.
We do nothing, we'll be bringing them out dead for sure.
So you are expecting casualties? Yes. I expect casualties.
John, you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Just give me a minute. Please. Okay. We can make it.
Well, there you have it, a story on that incredible rescue that we all watched a couple of years ago now. Let's bring you now an update on the weather and the extreme heat that we're all experiencing here in the capital. We are nearly through the worst of it. Another hot evening ahead, with it staying up in the early 30s up until around 9 p.m, dropping to around between 20 and 25 overnight. But Wednesday, it's back down to a cooler 26 degrees, and forecasters have said that thunderstorms and heavy showers will bring the heat wave to an end, which I'm sure our parks and gardens and our commutes will all appreciate that. Well, the latter part of the week is looking a bit overcast, and temperatures will stay around that 25-degree mark. It's time for a short break now, but next, as the travel industry continues to face a staffing crisis, industry experts are suggesting focusing on getting young talent into the sector is the way forward. Well, more on that next.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now, as the race for the next PM continues and 4 candidates continue battling it out, a group of leading charities are urging them to commit to a children's social care review and for urgent funding. Well, it comes as a new report has been launched this week by Action for Children, alongside the Children's Society, Barnardo's, National Children's Bureau and the NSPCC. Well, the research found that investment in early intervention support by councils in England dropped by 50% in 10 years to date. Well, I spoke to Imran Hussain, head of the policy and campaigns at Action for Children, to understand more about the impact that this could have.
Well, we're incredibly worried about what's happening. So, you know, we spend money to protect children through our children's services. So that's what local authorities do. And what's happening is the money that we've kind of spent, we have available for prevention is being squeezed out as more and more children enter the care system. And we just think that's all wrong, the wrong way to run the system. You know, it's like having an HS, which is just made up of A&E units and no primary care, no public health. You know, in the long run, that's just not going to work. It's dangerous, it's irresponsible, it will lead to higher costs. But that's kind of where we're heading with children's services. So all the bits of the system which are about reducing the demand for the need for children to go into care, they're being crowded out. And so we're seeing more and more children going into care. And the numbers going into care have increased rapidly in the last decade by about 20%. And if we carry on as we are, then we're going to see the numbers going into care will jump from 80,000 a year to 100,000 in 10 years' time.
Imran, if we look at the actual services that are, according to this report, having their funding reduced or taken away, what are those essential services? What does that look like on the ground? You know, what are the services that people are now not being able to go to, or more specifically, children?
Yeah, so the services that have been cut are a mix of things. So they include things like targeted family support. So where we know that young people are in families or situations where they're in trouble, and that might be down to you know, a parenting problem with drugs, or you know, drink addiction, or mental health problem, or the young person's got a disability and needs extra help. But we also have a universal family support, so things like children's centres, so help for parents to give their children the best start in life, whether it's around communication or language skills or mental health. And then we've also got specialist services for young people as well, so that's youth services as well. So there's a whole range of services that we kind of class as kind of early help, and the whole point of those is to kind of intervene early to get children on the right track before their problems build up. So those are the services that are being cut.
Yeah, so as you say, kind of dealing with it before it becomes an issue. The charities that have come together, this coalition of charities, the report that's come out of this has suggested that there's been a slow decrease over many years, and now with sort of 4 or 5 charities involved, you know, has this always been the case that you've come together and are trying to get your voices heard? And if so, do you feel like they are being heard?
So with charities, the charities have come together in recent years to make this point because we're incredibly concerned. It's also a point the Local Government Association is making. I mean, you know, town halls are in an impossible position because their money has been cut, which means they have to do the stuff which is about protecting children who are in trouble, who are at high risk. But because they have to do that and their money is being cut, it means there's not much money available to do the early help work. So this is something we've been concerned about, local authorities are concerned about. And just earlier this year, the government's independent review on children's social care came to the same conclusion, that we need more money for early help services. Otherwise, we're going to see more children in care and we're going to see the costs soar.
So following this report and the charities coming together, what are you exactly calling on the government to do? I know you're sort of calling out to the candidates that are in the running to be the next Prime Minister, so you can kind of capitalise on hoping that they'll hear your voice.
Yeah, I mean, so far we've had lots of people talk about in the leadership debates about tax cuts. Tax cuts cost a lot of money to the Exchequer. and much of that money goes to people in the better half of the income distribution. What we're saying is we also need to look at children in care. Now, the 2019 Conservative Manifesto had a promise to have a review into children's care. That's been published, and that's the one that says, hang on, like, we're on the wrong track. We've got to invest in early help. So what we want candidates to do is to kind of build on that previous manifesto pledge and kind of implement the key findings of the independent review that government commissioned. So it's great we've had the review. I think it's time now to kind of implement its key findings.
Yeah, you want to take it one step further. Of the candidates that are running and their sort of manifestos and what they're sort of promising to do, if they do kind of get into power, is there one that you think would be able to help this case or push this forward more than any of the others?
Well, we're worried about the fact that we're not hearing this point being raised by the candidates, so we're asking all of them to step up and to make a pledge in this area. So we're not getting involved in picking a winner, but we are saying that all of them should look to build on the 2019 manifesto pledge to look into this issue and take forward the findings of the review, because whoever wins the election will find that this will become an issue in terms of the numbers of children going into care will keep on rising, and the costs will keep on rising. So, this is a smart, necessary, urgent intervention.
Well, that was Imran Hussain there talking about the impact of decreased funding on early support and their campaign to try and change this. Now, as the travel industry faces a staffing crisis, according to new research found by the World Travel Market, focusing on young talent is the way forward, as half of those aged between 16 and 24 say that they're interested in a career in the sector. Well, with the World Travel Market coming up in November, it's been announced that this year's key theme will be recruitment and retention. Well, the exhibition director, Juliet Losado, has been telling us more about what is being done to solve this staffing crisis.
Specifically to travel, the staffing crisis is a massive knock-on effect from the pandemic. So if we look at the size of global travel, it contributed 10.3 million jobs to the global economy pre-pandemic. And as we all saw, that came to an absolute standstill in 2020 when the industry contracted by about 50%. So as we fast forward 2 years and we rock into 2022, restrictions are lifted fully in March, and all of a sudden we have 3 to 4 months to completely refuel the industry, and talent just hasn't come back fast enough. There's some recent research by World Travel Market which looks at staffing within the travel sector, and 60% has been found that people actually, in terms of sort of consumers out there, don't particularly fancy working in travel. And some of those things, some of the reasons associated to that are down to the fact that it's associated with long unsociable hours, the pay isn't fantastic, and so on and so forth. That said, 49% of the respondents in the age group of 16 to 24 said that they would be interested in working in travel. So I think that what travel needs to be doing over the coming months and years is to really, really start to target towards those younger youth markets and get them in from young. So get them, it's one of those industries where it's so easy to come in straight from school and really, really build your skills in industry. There's lots and lots of people that I know are right at the top of the industry who started at 16, and we love talent like that. My father is a pilot, so I also have sort of parents who work in the aviation sector, and you'll know that actually it's a job that's highly skilled. If you want to become a stewardess, you're looking at 4 weeks to 4 months training, and actually, if we lift the restrictions and then all of a sudden want the aircrafts to take off as fast as they did before, we've not only got to find all those people, we've got to put them through the training. So yeah, and it's a lovely industry for those who love to travel and whatnot. It's an interesting one because obviously, like I say, the research that we've done finds that, people are saying that they don't like the idea of time away from their family, the longer, more unsociable hours. Anyone who has a friend or family member who works in aviation, for example, will know that there are weekends when family and friends are away. You might miss a wedding and things like that. So I think that those are the challenges. I think also because it's been a sector where it's a passion sector. A lot of people that work in travel love it. And so there's been a reliance on that, I think. And to a degree, we need to make sure that the industry doesn't take advantage of people's goodwill to want to work in an amazing sector. And now things are so much more competitive, the industry needs to evolve, and it needs to start to look at work-life balance. Different things are important today than they were even 5 years ago. And we need to start to really, really talk to people about that work-life balance and making sure that people can do the jobs in travel and facilitate the industry, but also to be able to have a home life and be happy and be rewarded for it with good pay. Well, I can maybe touch a little bit more on that. I think, I think we need to think about loads of different things. It's a complex thing. So when we talk about, obviously I represent World Travel Market and we are a global show. So at XL London in November, we bring together 55,000 of the world's travel trade, and they come together to talk about the most common challenges. And we actually provide a great umbrella, I suppose, for everyone to come together and start to solve those challenges. Some of the key trends that we're seeing, every person I meet, whether I'm at a dinner or a networking event, speaking to our customers, everyone's telling me that recruitment is their biggest challenge. So this year at our show, we will be tackling those things, and we will be asking about what needs to be done.
That was Juliette Lissardo there talking about the travel and tourism industry and trying to get young people involved. You're watching London Live News with Tanya Francis. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, remembering Joe Cox, the annual fundraising cycle from Yorkshire to the capital in honour of the British politician killed in 2016.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
And welcome back. A reminder of our top story this evening. Kemi Badenoch has been voted out of the leadership race, leaving a remaining 3 candidates battling it out to become the Prime Minister and the leader of the Conservative Party. Well, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss are still in the running. This was the penultimate vote of Tory MPs, and tomorrow we'll find out who the final 2 candidates are. It will then be down to Tory members to pick the winner, who will be announced on the 5th of September. The London Fire Brigade have also declared a major incident across London in response to the heat and a huge surge in fires across the capital today, with over 350 firefighters tackling at least 4 grass fires. Well, the Mayor has tweeted calling it critical, saying that the London Fire Brigade are under immense pressure. Well, it comes as several houses were severely damaged after fires broke out on the outskirts of East London. The advice is to report a fire as soon as you see one, no barbecues, and to dispose of cigarettes safely. Well, it comes as today we reached record temperatures of 40.2 degrees Celsius. That's what the thermometers were showing at Heathrow around 1 o'clock this afternoon. It's the first time the UK has ever had temperatures above 40 degrees and was the highest number recorded across the whole of the UK. It was also the UK's warmest night on record last night. It didn't dip below 25 degrees, so let's see if we're going to top that this evening. Could be an uncomfortable night. We also saw disruption across the travel network as Oxford Circus Tube was evacuated following a suspected fire in one of the lifts. Despite 1 million Londoners braving the tube and buses this morning, which is considerably lower than normal levels, there were severe delays across most lines and the Thames cable car was closed. That's all due to the extreme heat that we're experiencing at the moment. Well, this extreme weather has come with a further warning from emergency services and the government about the dangers of trying to keep cool in waterways and rivers. It can be very tempting, but it comes after a 14-year-old boy is believed to have jumped into the Thames in Hampton after jumping off the Tags Head Island Bridge and didn't resurface. Well, a body has been recovered from the Thames after a search for the young boy. Well, sticking with the weather, 5 people were arrested after eco-activists from Extinction Rebellion smashed windows at the News UK headquarters in London early this morning. It's believed that they were protesting over the newspaper's coverage of the heatwave. Pictures show activists sitting in front of the building, wearing T-shirts, which you can see here read non-violent. 2 large windows were smashed, and the words "Tell the Truth" and 40 degrees equals death were spray painted on the front of the building. Now, in a first for the UK, schools in Southwark will not exclude students for behaving badly. According to the council, well, secondary schools in the borough have agreed to not send home disruptive children unless they have put another child's safety at risk. Teachers are being encouraged to understand the reason for bad behaviour by using a trauma-informed response and are being told not to take misbehaviour at face value. In other news, a new report has revealed parents or expecting mothers often receive conflicting advice from GPs and other maternity services. The London Council Beyond Boundaries research suggests that there is little or no information sharing between GPs, midwifery hospital services and health visiting services. But researchers did find a third of local authorities in London are working to create better support for families, with the report recommending local leaders use family hubs to improve information sharing. Now, the Mayor's extension of the ultra-low emissions zone has had a limited impact on reducing toxic air levels in the suburbs in the capital, according to new research. Well, TfL published data on pollution levels since the ULEZ expansion was put in place last October. Well, if we were to compare figures from January to March 2021, it shows a 56% reduction in nitrogen dioxide emissions in central London. If we compare that with just 44% from April to June of this year. So the figures show that the bulk of the benefit is connected with the original central London ULEZ zone, which was launched in April 2019. Well, Sadiq Khan has told the Evening Standard that the benefits are unarguable, with 67,000 fewer non-compliant vehicles on the roads, and that 93.8% of vehicles entering ULEZ are now compliant. Now, the annual Cox Way Cycle is back with more than 70 riders of all ages making their way from Yorkshire to here in London. Well, the 288-mile journey aims to connect people of all different backgrounds through their shared love of cycling. The challenge is in honour of British politician Jo Cox, who was murdered in 2016, which also marks the inception of the event and the fundraising for the Jo Cox Foundation. Let's take a look.
The cycle ride is from Batley, the local sports centre, Princess Mary Stadium, and it's from there in Batley, which was part of Jo Cox's constituency, down to London. And it's not, we're not going north to south and it's just dropping straight down. It's all downhill, anything but. Sadly, and the route the sort of ride started off as a memorial, really, to Jo Cox, who was unfortunately murdered by one of her constituents who didn't agree with what she was doing, which is absolutely terrible. But we always refer back to Jo's maiden speech, when very, very mixed constituency, different ethnic groups within the constituency. But as she said, we have more in common than we have differences. And I think it's building up on that. We have more in common, reminding ourselves of that. The ride, the people on the ride, pretty mixed group, and about 50-50 ethnic split between different sort of people's origin. Really nice. Everybody is so supportive of everybody else, and it's absolutely really is a fantastic group of people. There's at least 73 of us doing it. I think this might be about 74, 75 now, but there's at least 73 of us doing it. So tough ride, but I'm looking forward to it. I think what I want people to get out of it is to bring awareness that we're all individuals, we're all different, and not to class one group of people as that's how they are. We're all individuals, and that's, there's always people who you don't agree with. I'm not saying they're on the right, don't get me wrong. That's not quite what I meant to say there. We'll never all agree with one another, and we'll never have all the same views. But what I'd like people to get out of it is the fact that we're all individuals and don't class a particular group of people as all being the same. And we live in a country, Great Britain. Let's make it great by all mixing nicely together. It might be a bit idealistic, but so what? if people don't have ideals, nothing ever happens. So that's basically it. Let's all get on together and see how well we can get on, because we'll get on better than you think. And let's make Jo's memory something that, sort of, she's looking down on us and thinking, they're doing my name proud, and also something nice for her children as well, and a family, a husband, a sister, sort of, so that, they all feel that losing Jo wasn't absolutely a total waste, which must be very upsetting for the family. And it's nice to think that we're still remembering her.
Well, there you have it. That's the Cox Way Cycle, which will be from London to Yorkshire, taking place between Wednesday the 27th of July and Sunday the 31st. Time for our last quick break, but next... Mixing dubstep and piano. It seems like an unlikely mix, but financial analyst turned pianist Lionel Yu seems to have got the formula right. We'll speak to him next, ahead of his debut gig in the capital.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Hello and welcome back to the last part of tonight's show. Now, Alex falase-koya has released the third of his debut children's books called Marv, and the fictional collection follows an ordinary boy as he discovers he is next in a long line of superheroes. Well, after seeing a lack of black superheroes in children's fiction, Alex wanted to demonstrate the importance of representation in children's books. We've been speaking to him to find out more about the book and his inspiration for writing it.
It is about a young black boy who discovers a super suit up in his parents' attic, which his grandfather once used to be a superhero. And it is a super suit that is powered by kindness and imagination. And he has loads of adventures with him and his robot sidekick Pixel. I knew I wanted to be a writer very young. I was very into reading books. I read a ton of books, and I always tried to see if I could come up with stories myself. And so from as soon as I could read, basically, as soon as I fell in love with fiction, I've wanted to be a writer. The things that I would want to do with my writing is one is to entertain, to kind of entertain kids all across the world, and and to provide a character, to write characters like Marv, who I think all children can relate to, as in they are kind of normal kids who are not perfect, but at the end of the day are deep down good kids, and kind of to promote what I think are good strengths for children to have, which are kindness and self-belief, which I think Marv, the character, has. A representation in children's books is really important to me. I remember when I was growing up, I didn't get to read that many books with characters who looked like me. And I remember when I was writing my first stories, all of my main characters were white. And then I kind of had to sit back at some point and think about, hey, why is that? And I kind of realized that's because that's what I had been reading when I was growing up. And so I believe that kind of fiction can be a really important tool for expanding kids' imagination and expanding kids' idea about what's possible, and representation is a big part of that. The thing I would like to see going forward is I would love to see more representation, more of the things which I think are already happening, but more. I'm greedy in that way. I'm like more.
Yeah.
I would love to see more representation. I don't want kids to grow up maybe in an era similar to where I grew up, where it wasn't really that much of a thing. So Bowles, she's the illustrator of kind of the entire Marv series. She is extremely talented, and I think what ends up happening is it's a kind of a big collaboration where not just me, but everyone at Oxford Children's Books, they work with her and with me to make sure that we end up getting really good illustrations.
Well, there you have it. That book is out now. Well, a New York-based financial analyst turned pianist is making his UK debut next month here in the capital at the Barbican. Lionel Yu, who is famous for merging classical piano with electronic dance, has built up over 1 million followers on YouTube, where people have watched him, in a matter of years, evolve from working on Wall Street to becoming an established one-of-a-kind musician, merging dubstep with Beethoven. Well, he spoke to Lionel about his upcoming performance here in the capital.
This upcoming concert at Barbican Hall is going to be my biggest concert ever. and it's also the largest venue that I've ever performed at.
So this is your UK and London debut, and what a place to do it in the Barbican. How are you feeling ahead of that?
I'm feeling like extremely nervous and also just excited to share my music with my fans in London, and I know that it's gonna be a historic moment.
You've got a huge following on YouTube. Are you hoping that lots of people that have followed your journey and the music you create are gonna come and listen to you perform live?
Yeah, I mean that's really the reason why I do the concerts in the first place, is that my fans who have been following for years, they get a chance to experience the music live, and for them it's a once in a lifetime moment.
You've kind of created this genre of your own. Electronic dance meets kind of classical piano. How did you come up with this idea and also put it into practice?
I think for me it's like, how can we take classical music and take it to the next level? And I really, I've been playing classical music all my life, Beethoven, Chopin, Rachmaninoff, as a pianist. And I always wanted to truly explore the intensity and emotions of these pieces, of these melodies. And I feel like the medium to do it, is through electronic music, actually, or through these reimaginations of these legendary pieces into something that's more modern, but also very, I don't know, still very classical.
Tell me a bit about your previous job and what made you switch things up job-wise?
Yeah, I was a financial analyst for many years, for 8 years actually in New York City. I was working Morgan Stanley, and I was, I was always playing piano on the weekends, and writing my own pieces, until basically the age of 29, 30, so pretty late. I, decided to just quit and focus full time on being a musician and a YouTuber. It's really interesting that in 2019 actually, or in 2018, I was still working in finance, and then I just called up Carnegie Hall one day and said, I want to do a performance there, and that was the beginning of the music.
And tell us a bit about your YouTube channel. As I said earlier, you've got an enormous following.
Yeah, so YouTube is really, for me, it's a platform to share my music with the world. And my fans who have been following my channel, they have been with me every step of the journey, from when I was just recording in my parents' basement, just like these really poor quality videos, to now where I have very professional production and these huge concerts that that really bring a lot of people together. So it's been a big journey so far.
What should your fans and the audience as well expect from your UK debut at the Barbican?
I have structured the show into 4 segments. The first segment is my original piano solos, so starting on a simpler level, and then we're gonna have chamber music with piano, violin, and cello, and then it's gonna be the piano and EDM. So a lot of really epic dubstep and trap beats that most likely has never been performed at Barbican Hall before. I mean, I don't know, maybe it has, but I don't know. I don't think the venue is used to hearing that kind of dubstep EDM music. And then the last one will be with basically a half orchestra, 15 orchestral players, from woodwinds to strings, and it's gonna be like the most grand scale music.
Well, there you have it, something a little bit different. You can catch Lionel at the Barbican on the 24th of July. Now, a quick reminder of the weather this evening. We are nearly through the worst of it. Another hot evening ahead, with it staying in the early 30s up until around 9 p.m. tonight, and then dropping down to around 20 to 25 overnight. Wednesday, it's back down to a cooler 26 degrees. We might even see a bit of scattered rain, which I'm sure that all of our parks and gardens will really appreciate. The latter part of the week is looking a little bit more overcast, and temperatures staying around that 25°C mark. Well, we've come to the end of the show for tonight. Thank you for watching London Live News. More from across the capital on our social media channels, and you can catch us tomorrow at the same time. I hope you are able to escape the heat and have a lovely evening.